What's going on, guys? We are back with my top 10 players of 2017. And we got number 6, Fairy Peak. Probably the only time you'll see, like, his name is more exciting than himself in person. Very quiet person. One of the Frenchmen, you know, like, he's probably doesn't like to speak English as often. So he's a relatively quiet man, but on the field, he is one imposing player. We see here with his trademark Batmobile that he's been using. Only time we couldn't use it was E-League, but we're not going to get into that right now. But Fairy Peak, this was a year of growth for him, and his first introduction into competitive play for, at least on the RLCS main stage. He started off the year doing a lot of duos at the end of 2016, and that started 2017 with K-Dot. They formed a team that was Mockit with Mystic, and they had a really good performance. Obviously, I was on their bandwagon the entire season number 3. And honestly, Fairy Peak was one of the reasons why they kind of struggled during league play during season 3. He wasn't showing up as I think everyone expected him to throughout season 3. He slowly ramped up in the playoffs and then ramped up at the World Championship. Like, his stats aren't great at season 3 World Championship, but he definitely played really well. Keep in mind that a lot of Mockit's games were against Northern Gaming in that grand final that had a bracket reset. And all of those games were extremely defensive, so that's going to lower all of their stats, like, across the board. So Fairy Peak, yeah, sure, like the stats say he didn't do great at the Season 3 World Championship, but that's when I was like, all right, Fairy Peak is here. He is starting to perform, and he ramped up in Season 3, and that ramp has not stopped at all. Season number 4, he played exceptionally well with this Mockit squad. He got over 1 assist per game during league play. That's only happened twice, ever. And both of those times happened in season number 1, besides Fairy Peak here. That was Kronovi in season number 1 and Greasy Meister in season number 1. So it has not happened in the more competitive atmosphere of, I would say, seasons 2 through 4. So that's incredible. He had 1.03 assists per game. Number 1, of course. And just keep in mind, for season number 3, the highest in Europe was 0.72. So outstanding performance. Yeah, Pesci scored all the goals, but Fairy Peak was setting up a lot of them. He also had that amazing flip reset pass at 0 seconds to tie the game for Mockit on the reverse sweep for the 3rd place game versus PSG. He just has these incredible plays out of nowhere, and honestly, it was a little unfortunate for him because after season number 3, like, obviously Mockit went through a lot of changes because people left. Like, Mystic went to Flipside, K-Dot went to Gale Force. It left Fairy Peak trying to find a team. They bring Pesci back, and then they pick up Freaky, and I wasn't sure about this squad, but they really performed well. But the problem was they didn't get to go to any of the summer international events because they weren't really a team yet. Then also, with Gnarly, with Northern Arena, they weren't known to be one of the top 4 in Europe yet, so they didn't get an invite to that as well. So they didn't get a lot of chances to show what they have on the international stage. And honestly, season number 4 World Championship was not a great one for Mockit. The only team they beat was Pale Horse. But there was one exception, and that was probably the best player at the entire World Championship was Fairy Peak. Reminded me so much of when Garrett G was on that Exodus squad that couldn't find these international wins, but he would excel time and time again and really show off his skill as a player. And that's exactly what Fairy Peak did. He looked like he was a man on a mission trying to get Mockit those wins. Unfortunately, they lost out in 5 games to G2, but that was definitely not Fairy Peak's fault. He led all players in goals per game at 1.23 at the World Championship, and his shooting percentage was 44%. He was an absolute beast, and then that continued into E-League. He played exceptionally well there. He had the most goals and assists on his team and almost the most saves on his team as they went on their 3-0 run throughout the group stage of E-League and then went on to lose to G2 once again in the bracket stage. But at least it showed that Mockit can get some wins on the international stage. It showed Fairy Peak was not a one-hit wonder like at this World Championship. He's been performing exceptionally well all season. And for those that weren't sure about that, they thought, hey, maybe he'll tone it down in E-League. But no, he kept it going. Just his teammates picked it up as well throughout the E-League playoffs. And it's just unfortunate that we didn't get to see him in more international events because he could have maybe skyrocketed up this list even further. But he left a good taste in our mouth at the end of 2017 with some phenomenal play. I expect some more from Fairy Peak. He's definitely one of the stars of this game of the RLCS. I could easily see him making an MVP run in 2018 in one of those seasons, but he's looking extremely strong. And I just want to see more from him, honestly. I just want to see more play. Because season number 3, we're going to wash that one away. It wasn't great. It was his first experience into it, but he really performed well season 4. And who knows? He's one of the best, like, deflection shooters, I would say, like, in the game. And also, he was setting up tons of passes to Pesci. That pressure he gives. He's like that midfield player on Mockit. He plays that midfield, usually that first man up to set everything up. And either that turns into a deflection or it turns into a pass. So, like, deflections can obviously be passes as well. But either, like, a deflection shot or he passes it out relatively well. And Mockit, everyone talks about them being a very defensive team. They turned more into an offensive powerhouse, and a lot of that has to do with how Fairy Peak was playing that midfield game. It allowed them to relieve that pressure and just start going on the attack more often. And it really worked out for him this season. And Mockit's one of those teams, they're a big question mark for me going into this next season. They can be one of those teams that falters, but probably will not be because of Fairy Peak. My number 6 player of 2017. Put it in the books. We'll see you in a few days for number 5.